So for the last couple weeks, I've been asked to do some trainings at schools and students and stuff. And so one of them was to come up with why do we share the gospel? And so the notorious why that we use in the 411 is obviously Second Corinthians chapter 5, verse 17 through 21. And the reason we share the gospel is our identity because we're ambassadors of Christ. But I was thinking about it. Could we develop other why, small, real tight why modules for why we share the gospel? And so there's actually quite a few of them in the New Testament. So here's my attempt at creating another why for in the 411, maybe or just at standalone. So you put why up here. Why do we share the gospel? And so what I do is I put Romans. This is a great one. Chapter 1, verse 14 through 16, right there. And then we read it. We just read it real quick with your buddy. And so we're going to read that. And it says, I'm obligated both to Greeks and non-Greeks, both to the wise and to the foolish. That is why I'm so eager to preach the gospel also to you who are in Rome, for I'm not ashamed of the gospel, because it is the power of God that brings salvation to everyone who believes, first the Jew and then to the Gentile. So we see here three postures toward the gospel. These are really simple. The first one, I'm obligated. Verse 14. 2, I'm eager. Verse 15. And third one, I'm not ashamed. You ask the question, why am I obligated? Why am I eager? Why am I ashamed? Because it is the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes. That is why we share the gospel. Bam. That was pretty quick. So there you go. Read it with your buddy. What do you guys see as the posture to the gospels they talk about? And you're like, yeah, bam. Number one, I'm obligated. Number two, I'm eager. Number three, I'm not ashamed. Why? Because it's the power of God for salvation all to everyone who believes. All right, really simple. Now, let me just training over to, let me put a pause in here. The word in some older translations here is I'm indebted. And this is just teaching here. I'm indebted both to Greek, or I'm sorry, both to the wise, non-Greeks, both to the wise and the foolish. And that word indebted is actually kind of gives it a little more of a nuance. How do I get indebted to people I don't even no? Well, here's the question: how do I get indebted? I take something from them, I borrow money. Well, but how am I indebted to people that I have not met yet? And I thought about that. I'm like, well, indebted means I owe them something. And so am I in debt to non-Greeks, to the wise, and Greeks, and to the foolish? Well, think about it this way. Maybe this is a better way of thinking about it. If someone came up to you and gave you $100 bill and said, I want this to be given to your neighbor. This is theirs, but I want you to give it to them. Now, they don't know that, but I want you to give that money to them. Do you realize at that moment you are indebted to that person because you've been given something that actually needs to go to them? The gospel was always never intended to terminate with us. It was always puts us in debt to the people that we are around who need to hear it. Hope that blesses you. If you have any questions or anything or feedback, let me know.